The galactic assembly fell silent as humanity walked out in rage. The chamber of the Galactic Concord holds 412 member species. I count 11 emergency exits the first time I walk in. 3 months into my third rotation as Earth's head delegate, I count them every morning. Not because I plan to use them. Because I like knowing where they are. Old habits from the Titan campaign don't die. They just get better dressed. The chamber is enormous in the way that only things designed to make you feel small can be. The ceiling pulses with bioluminescent light, each color representing the emotional wavelength of a different species. Right now it is cycling through something the translation matrix calls collegial satisfaction. I have learned that collegial satisfaction means the vote went the way the old members wanted it to. My name is Dara Vasquez. Earth's head delegate to the Galactic Concord, which is a title that sounds impressive until you understand what provisional means. We have been provisional members for 19 years. We attend every session. We submit every report. We speak in every open forum. We vote on nothing. The ancient Veildraw speaker, a creature that looks like smoke given a formal robe, opens today's session with the standard greeting. He has been moderating these proceedings for 4,000 years. He has never once pronounced my name correctly. Today it comes out as Dara Vasquez, with the accent landing somewhere that doesn't exist in any human language. I don't correct him. I stopped correcting him 14 months ago. My aide, Owen, sits to my left. Owen is 26 years old and still believes that the system works if you speak to it correctly. I find this quality both exhausting and necessary. He keeps me from becoming entirely fossilized in my cynicism. I keep him from being eaten alive by the procedure. He slides a small note across the table. It reads, Cathari Block is voting yes on the mineral extraction amendment. 3rd time this month. I write back, log it. He writes, already did. I write, good. This is our primary form of communication during sessions. The translation matrix picks up whispered conversation and broadcasts it to whoever has tuned to our frequency. We learned that in month 2. The old members have been doing this for centuries. Nobody told us. The Cathari delegate, Arch-Counselor Pren, 8-limbed and always somehow leaning toward whoever he is speaking to, rises to address the assembly on the new mineral extraction protocol. He is elegant. He is thorough. He is, as always, completely certain that he is the most important person in any room. He pauses at one point and looks toward the human delegation. Humanity's resilience, he says, in the warm tone of someone reading from a compliment he prepared earlier, continues to impress the full membership. 412 species nod, pulse, or emit their version of approval. Owen looks at me. I write on the note, log that too. 19 years of being called resilient. 19 years of being patted on the head by species who consumed 3 of our trade routes and called it cooperative development. Resilient. Like we were some kind of interesting geological formation. Something you admire for surviving. Not something you take seriously. After the session, I walk the outer corridor. It is tall and curved and made of a stone-like material that no human geologist has ever been able to identify, partly because we have never been given access to the architectural records of this building. Another thing nobody mentioned. Suan finds me there. She is the Polari delegate. Her species is older than the Concord itself, older than most of the founding agreements, older than the language the treaty was written in. She is small and four-fingered and she speaks perfect English with an accent that is, inexplicably, slightly South Chicago. They will call a special session, she says, walking beside me without invitation. Within the week. About the Pathfinder proposal. About humanity. She says it the way someone says the name of a thing they have been watching for a long time. They have been building this for 2 years. The offer will look like elevation. Read the foundation before you look at the roof. She stops at the end of the corridor. Do not give them anything yet, she says. Then she is gone. I stand there in the corridor, tall and curved and made of stone no human has ever been allowed to study, and I think about what yet means. Owen appears behind me. He has been running the session transcripts through the archive comparison software he built in his 3rd week on the job, because Owen does things like that. He has a look on his face that I recognize. The look of someone who found something they did not want to find. The mineral extraction amendment, he says. The one that passed today. I cross-referenced it with the Kandara Accord implementation schedule. And He shows me the tablet. 3 of Earth's registered asteroid operations in the outer belt fall under the new amendment's jurisdiction. Not because of anything Earth agreed to. Because the amendment's boundary definitions were drawn to include them. Those definitions were drafted 14 months ago. No one on the provisional delegation was present for the drafting committee. Because provisional members are not invited to drafting committees. I look at the numbers. I look at the date. 14 months ago. 2 months before I started this rotation. The corridor is very quiet. How many exits in this corridor? I ask. Owen looks around. 2. 1 at each end. There's a third, I say. Service panel behind the Polari section. It connects to the south maintenance level. He stares at me. How do you know that? I counted, I say. I walk back toward the delegate quarters. The ceiling above the main chamber is still pulsing in collegial satisfaction. The next morning, the speaker announces a special emergency session. Closed forum. 3 days from now. I sit very still when he says it. Then I count the exits again. 12. I had missed one before. The closed forum smells like recycled air and something the translation matrix renders as mutual interest. I have learned, in 3 years of diplomatic service across 2 planetary systems, that mutual interest means one party has already decided and the other party is about to find out. The session opens with no preamble. The Vorshan block presents the proposal. 7 species. Ancient. Patient the way glaciers are patient, not because they are slow, but because they move at a speed that makes everything else feel temporary. Their lead speaker, Archspeaker Vethan, has 4 mouths and uses all of them when he talks. The effect is not monstrous. It is something closer to architectural, like standing inside a cathedral built to carry sound. The proposal is called the Pathfinder Compact. It offers humanity full membership in the Galactic Concord. Full voting rights. A permanent seat on the Security Consortium. An official recognition of Earth's sovereign boundaries out to 3 standard stellar units. Everything we have been asking for across 19 years of provisional status, compressed into a single document, presented with the warmth of a gift. Owen sits beside me. He has gone very still. He is the kind of person who goes still when something is wrong, not from fear, but from calculation. He is running numbers in his head. I can tell because his pen has stopped moving, and his pen never stops moving. I read the full document. Then I read it again. I read the annexes, which are written in the secondary Concord legal dialect that requires a dedicated translation module and which most delegations do not bother to run because the annexes are considered administrative. The annexes are where the real document lives. I raise my hand for recognition. The speaker grants it with the slightly surprised tone he uses whenever the human delegation speaks in a closed session. Thank you, I say. I have some questions about implementation. Archspeaker Vethan smiles with 2 of his mouths. Of course. My first question is about Section 7, Subsection C, which establishes the Concord Governance Board for Wormhole Research. Specifically, which member species hold permanent seats on that board. Vethan explains the composition. The founding 7. The 3 senior members. 1 rotating provisional seat with a 2-year term. I ask who currently chairs the board. He tells me it is the Cathari representative. I write 1 word on my notepad and slide it to Owen, Pren. Owen writes back, of course. My second question is about Section 12, which transfers oversight of military wormhole application from Sole Command to the Peacekeeping Directorate. Vethan explains that this is standard for full members. Integration of military infrastructure into the Concord framework ensures collective security. I ask who currently chairs the Peacekeeping Directorate. He tells me. It is also a Cathari. A different one, technically. But the same block. My third question is about Section 19, which allows for the suspension of full member status in cases of procedural noncompliance, as defined by a 2/3 vote of the Security Consortium. I ask what the current composition of the Security Consortium is. He tells me. 9 permanent members. 5 of them are Vorshan block. I thank him and sit down. Owen's pen starts moving again. He is logging every answer. He has been logging everything since his first week. The archive is now over 4,000 entries. When he asked me once why we bother, since provisional members cannot initiate formal complaints, I told him we were not building a complaint. We were building a record. Records are patient things. I ask 4 more questions. Then 3 more. Each one landing on a different joint in the proposal structure, pressing on it just hard enough to feel where it gives. The chamber grows quieter as the questions continue. The older delegates recognize the pattern. The younger ones are still trying to figure out what I am actually asking. What I am asking is, what is the door, and where does it lock from? By my 14th question, even Vethin's warmth has acquired a slight texture of impatience. He assures me that humanity's security concerns are understandable given their relative youth in the interstellar community. Owen slides me a note. He called us young again. I write back, log it. Then the vote happens. It passes 398 to 14. The 14 no votes come from every species currently holding provisional status. The full members vote yes, every single one. Including Suan. I watch her hand press the affirmative panel. Steady. No hesitation. No glance across the chamber. The ceiling pulses gold. Archspeaker Vethin congratulates humanity on its elevation. I place my delegate's tablet face down on the table. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just face down, the way you put something away when you are done with it. Owen is watching me. Get me a secure channel to Geneva, I say. He opens it without asking anything else. That is why Owen is good at this job. I speak to the Prime Delegate for 11 minutes. I walk through every question, every answer, every annex. I walk through what the Pathfinder Compact gives and what it permanently removes. I am precise. I do not editorialize. The facts do not need help. At the end, the Prime Delegate says, "What do you recommend?" I say, "That is not my call." He is quiet for 3 seconds. Then he says, "Then it is ours." I wait. Earth says no. 1 word. Transmitted in standard Concord diplomatic protocol on 7 encrypted frequencies, filed simultaneously across every assembly bureaucratic channel within the hour. No. I sit in the closed forum chamber after the session ends. The other delegations have gone. The ceiling has stopped pulsing. The translation matrix has gone quiet. Owen is at the door. They are going to call it a procedural error, he says. They will say we did not understand the document. I know. What do we do? I pick my tablet up from the table and turn it face up again. Tomorrow, I say, I am going to wear the formal sash. He stares at me for a moment. Then he straightens his collar. I return to the main chamber floor the following morning. The formal sash is red and silver and is, according to Concord protocol, worn only during addresses of formal significance. I have worn it twice in 3 years. The first time was my opening statement as head delegate. The second time was when I notified the Assembly of the loss of the research station on Kepler-7, which took 41 crew members with it, and which the Concord's incident response team had classified as outside their jurisdictional scope 3 days before. Today is the third time. Owen walks 2 steps behind me. Standard protocol puts the aide to the left. He is 2 steps behind because that is where you walk when you are prepared for something to break. I request recognition from the speaker. He grants it with the usual courtesy note. Provisional members may address the chamber in the post-vote period on matters of implementation. A small permission. A leash length of rope. I take it and I pull. I do not begin with a greeting. I do not begin with a statement of purpose. I begin with a number. Section 12 of the Kandara Accord, I say, was implemented on the 14th of March, in the year 2271, at a session that Earth's provisional delegation was locked out of for procedural review. The chamber is quiet. I pull up the next number. The review lasted 6 hours. The session lasted 4. During those 4 hours, the boundary language of the Kandara Accord was finalized. Earth's asteroid operations in grid sectors 7 through 11 were reclassified as falling under Concord Common Resource Jurisdiction. We had developed the extraction methodology used in those sectors over 6 years. It cost 11 lives to get it right. 11 people, by name. I say the names. All 11 of them. The chamber does not know what to do with names. The Concord operates in designations and coordinates and jurisdictional references. 11 names, spoken one after another, do not translate into anything the protocol has a category for. Good. I move to the next one. The Sethmere exclusion of 2271. 40 light-years of human colony space reallocated to Vorshan trade routes during a border dispute arbitration. Earth's delegation filed 4 formal objection notices. All 4 were received, processed, and archived. None of them were placed on the arbitration agenda. The arbitration concluded in 9 days. The reallocation has been in effect for 15 years. Vethin shifts in his seat. One of his 4 mouths closes. I move to the next one. The Cooperative Development Summit of 2279. Earth shared its wormhole research framework with the full membership as a gesture of scientific partnership. 48 hours later, that framework was reclassified as Concord Common Knowledge under Article 34 of the Science Cooperation Charter. Earth received no compensation. No credit in the formal record. A single notation in an annex document described our contribution as a voluntary donation. Archspeaker Vethin rises. Delegate Vasquez, the charter clearly. I know what the charter says, I say. I have read every version of it since the first human delegation arrived in this chamber and was handed a copy and told it would protect them. He sits back down. I look at the chamber. 412 species. Bioluminescent ceiling. The ancient speaker who has been moderating these proceedings for 4,000 years and who has never pronounced my name the same way twice. I say one more word. Titan. I do not explain it. I do not elaborate. The word goes into the translation matrix and comes out in 700 languages, and in every single one of them it costs something to say. I let it sit. The chamber sits with it. Then Archspeaker Vethin, with the grace of someone who has been managing difficult meetings for several centuries, speaks. He acknowledges Earth's concerns. He notes that grievances of this nature can be addressed through the standard appeals process, which is designed precisely for situations where member species feel that procedural outcomes have not met their expectations. The process, he explains, typically resolves within 30 to 40 years, depending on the complexity of the case. I look at him for a long time. 30 years, I say. The process is thorough. I have a daughter, I say. She is 22. Her name is Nina. She is studying environmental engineering at the University of Edinburgh. She wanted to come to this session. I told her the sessions are long and procedural and mostly not worth the travel. I said that to protect her from this room. I understand now that I was also protecting myself from her watching it. She will be 52, I say, before an appeal could be heard. The chamber is completely silent. 412 species in complete, unanimous silence. This is not a response they have a category for either. I reach into my jacket. The provisional membership seal is a physical object. Engraved titanium, 23 centimeters across, heavier than it looks. When humanity came to its first assembly session 19 years ago, it insisted on physical seals. Every other species thought this was charmingly archaic. They used digital registration, quantum-encoded credentials. They thought our insistence on something you could hold in your hand was sweet. I place the seal on the center of the table. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Concord, I say. Effective now. Nobody speaks. Owen is already standing. Archspeaker Vethin begins. The withdrawal process requires filing of standard. File it yourself, I say. I walk out. Owen holds the door open. He closes it behind us with a soft, precise click that is somehow louder than anything that happened in the room. The corridor outside is long and curved. My footsteps echo. Owen's footsteps echo. That is all there is for a moment. Then I feel it. The weight of what I just did settling into my chest the way cold air settles into a room when a window opens. Not regret. Something older than regret. The particular heaviness of a thing that cannot be undone. I find the service corridor behind the Polari section. Suan is already there, leaning against the wall with her arms folded. Small and ancient and four-fingered and dressed in a robe that was probably formal in an era before the Concord existed. I stop. She looks at me. Her expression is not surprise. It is something that has been waiting for the right moment to be what it is. I voted yes, she says, so they would not know that I knew what you would do. The corridor is very quiet. Did you know? I ask. I suspected, she says. Your species has a particular look before a decision like this. We have a word for it in the old language. It means the face a person makes when they have finished being patient. I lean against the opposite wall. What happens now? Owen asks from behind me. Neither Suan nor I answer for a moment. Then I say, now they find out what 19 years of no actually built. 6 months later, the building that houses Earth's Diplomatic Coordination Office in Geneva smells like bad coffee and recycled air. I have been in enough government buildings across enough star systems to know that this particular smell is the one universal constant in the galaxy. Every species, every culture, every civilization, the place where decisions get made always smells like this. Like effort. Like people who have been there too long. I am one of those people now. I sit at a desk that was not designed for the amount of paper I keep on it. Owen has tried 3 times to digitize the filing system. 3 times I have returned the physical folders to their places. There is something about being able to touch a document, to pick it up, feel its weight, see a handwritten margin note, that a screen cannot replicate. He has stopped arguing about it. He simply keeps both systems running in parallel. The 6 months since the walkout have moved the way consequential things move. Not quickly, not slowly, but with the specific momentum of a landslide. Quiet at first. Then loud. Then you realize the ground is different and you are somewhere new and there is no going back to the geography you had before. Earth's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Concord was processed, eventually, through the standard administrative office. It took 11 days for them to locate the correct forms. It took another 4 days for them to confirm that yes, the withdrawal was valid under the original founding charter, because the founding charter was written by species who could not imagine a member ever wanting to leave and so had not made the process difficult. This was the first structural surprise. The second was the wormhole research. Earth's wormhole framework, the one reclassified as Concord Common Knowledge 48 hours after we shared it, was, as it turned out, only half of what we had. The framework we shared was the architectural skeleton. The living tissue of it, the actual navigational computation that made the skeleton work, had never left Earth's servers. We shared the door. We kept the key. The Concord's physics team spent 3 weeks discovering this. Their formal inquiry, requesting access to the remaining research under Article 34, the same Article 34 that had absorbed our work in the first place, arrived on Owen's desk in week 4. Owen flagged it to Geneva. Geneva flagged it to the Earth Legal Coordination Office. The Earth Legal Coordination Office noted that Article 34 applies exclusively to Concord member species, and that Earth was no longer a member species, and that consequently Article 34 had no jurisdictional reach over Earth's research at all. The inquiry was returned, politely, unanswered. The third structural surprise was the Kandara Accord. The 11 miners, the ones whose names I said in the chamber, the ones whose work had produced the extraction methodology that the Concord reclassified as common knowledge, had been developing that methodology under an Earth-registered patent. The patent filing was 19 years old. It predated Earth's provisional membership. It predated the Kandara Accord. It predated every agreement that had subsequently absorbed it. Earth's legal team had been sitting on a very carefully documented argument for 9 years. They had been waiting for the moment when raising it would not simply result in another procedural dismissal. They had been building the record quietly, the way you build anything you intend to last. The moment was now. 41 Concord member species currently operating asteroid extraction programs using Kandara methodology received a formal notification. The notification explained the patent history. The notification explained the royalty structure. The notification explained that as Earth was no longer subject to the Concord's common knowledge reclassification, the original patent was fully restored. Retroactively. Back to the date of first use. Owen told me about the Kethari response when I came in that morning. He set a cup of coffee on my desk and said, "Arch-Counselor Pren is requesting a conversation." I said, "Log the request." "That is all. Log it and put a date on it." He did. The fourth thing that happened in the 6 months was not something that showed up in a legal document or a diplomatic communication. It showed up in a transmission from Laura, who coordinates civilian support services at the Kandara 7 colony. She sent a voice message, 14 minutes long, about the families of the 11 miners. About what the patent restoration meant in practical terms for people who had waited 9 years for some form of acknowledgement. About Patrick's daughter, who had been born the year her father died and was now 9 years old and had never once heard anyone outside the colony say his name in an official context. I listened to the whole message. Then I sat for a while without moving. The victories are real. The legal outcomes are real, and they matter, and they are the product of 19 years of careful, deliberate, exhausting work. But the thing about hard-won outcomes is that they do not clean up after themselves. The 11 names I said in the chamber are still 11 names. The colony is still there. Laura is still coordinating. Patrick's daughter is still 9. The record is satisfied. The people are ongoing. Owen knocked on the door frame at some point. He has a sense for when I have gone somewhere difficult in my own head. The Vorshan want a meeting, he said. I looked up. Not a session. Not a forum. A meeting. Vethan himself. I thought about it for a moment. Schedule it, I said. The meeting took place on a neutral communications channel, encrypted on both ends. Vethan appeared on screen with all 4 of his mouths arranged in a diplomatic expression, the one that says, I am about to be generous and I would like you to appreciate it. He offered modified terms. An adjusted version of the Pathfinder Compact. Co-governance of the wormhole research rather than full transfer. An independent review of the Kandara royalty structure. A revised security consortium composition with broader provisional representation. He spoke for 9 minutes. The offer was genuinely better than the original. I let him finish. Do you know, I said, why humanity survived 3 extinction-level events in the last 400 years? He said that humanity's remarkable resilience. No, I said. That is not why. He waited. We survived, I said, because every time something tried to end us, we got angry enough to get creative. We did not sit down and negotiate with the thing that was ending us. We built something new. He was quiet. What we are building, I said, is not something you can modify. You can observe it. You can request partnership later, when the terms are ours to set. But the conversation we are having right now, with me explaining to you why your offer is too small and too late, that is the last of this kind we will have. I ended the call. Owen was in the doorway. He said, was that the right move? I said, ask me in 2 years. 3 weeks after that call, the first 17 provisional member species filed their own withdrawal notices from the Galactic Concord. The same week, Earth opened the first wormhole on a non-Concord route. It connected the outer settlement at Greyfield Station to a cluster of independent systems that the Concord had designated as developing regions, which was their terminology for places they had not yet fully incorporated into their trade network. The wormhole opened on a Tuesday morning, Geneva time. I was in the office. Owen pulled up the transit feed. We watched the first 3 ships go through. None of them were Concord flagged. Owen said, I think we are going to need a bigger building. I looked at the transit feed. 17 species filing withdrawal papers. Wormhole routes opening like cracks in old ice. The Lyran corridor sitting precisely where it had always sat, right through the middle of sovereign human space, now a very different piece of geography than it had been 6 months ago. Get me the patent office, I said. For what? The Lyran transit toll structure, I said. It needs to be filed before anyone thinks to argue jurisdiction. He stared at me for a moment. Then he picked up the communication terminal. 2 years later, the Chamber of the Sovereign Compact holds 31 member species. It was built with 11 emergency exits. I wrote the architectural specification personally. Owen added 2 more service corridor connections when I was in a budget meeting. I found them on the final blueprint and left them in without comment. He was right. The chamber is smaller than the Galactic Concord's hall. It is smaller in the way that something built for a specific purpose is smaller than something built to impress. More functional, less decorative, with seats designed in consultation with every species attending rather than assigned according to a historical hierarchy that no one had reviewed in 800 years. The ceiling does not pulse. We discussed it. 3 species wanted 1. 4 species found it disorienting. The final agreement was a fixed warm light, adjustable per delegation preference at the individual console level. Simple. Workable. Nobody had to compromise their comfort to satisfy someone else's tradition. Suan of the Polari sits at the first voice position. She accepted it after the Compact's founding vote, with the condition that the title be first voice rather than speaker, on the grounds that the Polari word for their own role in conversation has no direct equivalent in Concord standard, and she preferred something that acknowledged this rather than papering over it. Her English is still perfectly South Chicago. Owen sits to my left. He has been promoted 3 times in 2 years and has refused a corner office twice on the grounds that a corner office would mean he could not hear the corridor and he needs to hear the corridor. He keeps the same pen. He keeps the same habit of going still when something is wrong. I am not head delegate anymore. I am founding consul of the Sovereign Compact, a title Owen named during a budget meeting when I was not in the room to stop him. I attend sessions from the back of the chamber. Not because I have been removed from the process, I remain very much in the process, but because leadership that stands at the front of every room teaches the room to wait for it. I prefer rooms that move on their own. The Galactic Concord has sent an observer. Her name is Lena Marsh, and she is young and precise, and she has done her preparation thoroughly. I can tell because she has read the secondary annexes of the Compact Charter. She referenced them correctly in her preliminary communications, which is not something you do by accident. She is not Vethan. She is not playing the same game he played. I find this both encouraging and something I need to watch carefully. She has come with a formal request that the Sovereign Compact recognize the existing Concord territorial agreements in the Lyran Corridor, as established under the Interstellar Navigation Accord of the previous century. Suan grants her the floor. Lena Marsh presents the case cleanly. She does not overargue it. She lays out the historical agreements, the navigational dependencies, the practical disruption that has occurred over 2 years of uncertain jurisdiction, and she makes a reasonable case that clarity benefits everyone. She is right that clarity benefits everyone. She is making the wrong argument about where the clarity should come from. I raise my hand from the back of the chamber. Suan sees it. The founding consul, she says. I do not go to the floor podium. I stay where I am. We recognize every agreement that humanity signed, I say. Lena Marsh nods. We do not recognize the agreements we did not sign. She checks her document. She cross-references. She looks up. That is nearly all of them. Yes, I say. It is. The chamber is quiet. 31 species, 400 delegates, a fixed warm light overhead that everyone chose together. I think about what I want to say next. Not what will be most effective diplomatically. I have been doing diplomatic work for 21 years and I know its language well. I mean what I actually want to say. The real thing. The thing underneath all the procedure. Every agreement that humanity did not sign was signed on our behalf, I say. By the Provisional Membership Framework, which granted the full Assembly the authority to set terms that would be binding on us once we achieved full membership. We were told this was standard. We were told it was how the process worked. We were new and we were trying to do things correctly and we trusted that the process was designed to be fair. I pause. We learned that processes are not designed to be fair. They are designed to reproduce the conditions of whoever designed them. The Concord's founding members designed a process that reproduced their advantage across 4,000 years of new arrivals. This was not malicious. It was structural. Structures do not need malice. They just need momentum. Lena Marsh is listening carefully. I notice she is not writing anything down. She is memorizing it. Another sign that she has done her preparation. The Sovereign Compact's charter was written by every species present as full co-authors, I continue. No annexes were drafted without representation from all member species. No boundary definitions were set without direct consultation. Every vote that has passed in this chamber was passed by parties who were in the room for the writing of the terms. I stand up. This is what we want, I say. Not the Concord's collapse. Not any kind of dramatic ending. We want agreements that we actually made. We want processes that we actually designed. We want the seat at the table to mean something about what happens at the table, not just permission to observe what has already been decided. I walk to the front of the chamber. I do not go to the podium. I stand on the floor, where I can see all 31 delegations. My daughter, I say, is 24. Her name is Nina. She is finishing her second year of graduate research in environmental engineering and she is going to spend her career working on atmospheric restoration for the colonies in the outer settlement belt, which are living with the ecological consequences of mineral extraction agreements that their grandparents did not sign. I let that sit. The thing I want for Nina is not a better version of what the Concord offered. I want her to live in a structure that does not require her generation to spend 20 years undoing the agreements that her parents' generation never consented to. I want the agreements that define her world to have been made by people who considered her world when they wrote them. I look at Lena Marsh. Humanity is willing to negotiate a Lyran transit framework. We are willing to do it transparently, with full representation from every species who uses the corridor, including Concord members. We are willing to produce an agreement that works for everyone and that everyone actually signs. That is what we are asking, she says carefully. A negotiated framework. I know, I say. But there is a difference between a negotiated framework presented as the alternative to our recognition of an existing agreement, and a genuinely new framework built from a blank document with equal authorship. The Concord's request is the first kind. What I am describing is the second kind. She considers this. The Concord will need time to assess that position. Take the time, I say. We kept records. We know how to wait. She gathers her materials. She is professional and thorough, and she does not perform offense at anything I have said, which tells me she was briefed to expect exactly this conversation. Someone in the Concord's diplomatic corps is paying attention now in a way that was not happening 2 years ago. Good. Paying attention is how you get to the kind of conversation where a genuinely new framework becomes possible. After the session closes, Owen finds me on the observation deck. The deck faces the outer systems. On a clear night, and most nights are clear out here, away from the light of the older settled worlds, you can see the Lyran corridor without equipment. A smear of brightness across the dark, dense with transit ships. 2 years ago those ships were almost entirely Concord flagged. Now the count runs roughly even. 31 member species, 17 of them former Concord provisionals, all of them moving goods and people and ideas through routes that were not accessible to them before. Owen stands beside me with 2 cups of the bad coffee that every government building makes. He hands me one. 31 member species, he says. We had 9 when we opened the first wormhole. I know. Where do you think we end up, he asks. I hold the cup. I think about Nina, who called me last week from Edinburgh to tell me about an atmospheric restoration technique she is developing that could cut the recovery timeline for a strip-mined moon from 400 years to 60. I told her it was extraordinary work. She said, "You are not even going to ask about the methodology." I said, "Tell me the methodology." She did. For 47 minutes. I understood maybe a third of it. I told her so. She said, "That is fine. You understand the part that matters." I asked her which part that was. She said, that 60 years is within a human lifetime. That someone could see the beginning and the end of the recovery. That it would mean something personal to someone alive right now. I think about Patrick's daughter, who is 11 now, and who knows her father's name is in a diplomatic record, which is not the same as having a father, but is also not nothing. Laura sends me updates when she can. The colony has a new water reclamation system that came partly from a trade agreement with one of the Compact's new members. Things move. I think about Suan, who voted yes in a closed forum 2 years ago so the Concord would not suspect she had already read the ground beneath the offer and decided which side of the chain she wanted to be on. I think about the 13 exits in this building, 2 of which Owen put in quietly and correctly. I think, I say, that in 10 years the Concord will apply for observer status with the Compact. Owen is quiet for a moment. And we will grant it, he asks. We will consider it, I say. On terms that we write. In a room where all parties were present for the writing. He drinks his coffee. Below us, a wormhole opens in the Greyfield corridor. A ship comes through. Then another. Then 3 more in close sequence. The transit feed on the deck's small display shows compact registry numbers, route origins from 4 different systems, cargo manifests that read like a list of things people actually need. Food processing components. Medical equipment. Atmospheric testing instruments. Structural materials for a colony that is 12 years into its 2nd decade of existence. Ordinary things. Moving between places that are talking to each other now. We need to schedule the Lyran framework drafting session, I say. I know, Owen says. I already started the invitation list. Of course he did. I look out at the corridor. All that light. All those ships. The whole unglamorous, complicated, ongoing work of building something that outlasts the people who started it. I stop counting exits. I already know where they all are.